This is your sign. The universe wants you to see it now. The moment you were meant to find this. Something in you knew. Before you pressed play, before the title caught your eye, before the algorithm delivered this to your screen, something in you already knew that today was different. There was a pull, a quiet, insistent feeling that you needed to stop, to be still, to listen. And here you are. That is not a small thing. That is everything. You may have been carrying something heavy lately, a restlessness that sits just beneath the surface of your days, a question that keeps returning no matter how many times you push it away, a sense that life is trying to tell you something and you keep almost hearing it, but not quite. You have been searching, maybe consciously, maybe without even realizing it, but the searching has been there, in the pauses between your thoughts, in the moments when the noise drops away and something quieter rises in its place. In the middle of the night when sleep will not come. In the middle of a crowded room when you suddenly feel utterly alone. In the middle of a conversation that should have held your attention but couldn't, because something deeper was calling. This video found you, not the other way around. And if you have spent any time at all paying attention to the way the universe communicates, you already understand what that means. There are no accidents in the architecture of a soul's journey. There are no random scrolls. No meaningless moments of curiosity. No coincidences dressed up as algorithms. What brings a person to the exact content they need at the exact moment they need it is something far older and far more intelligent than technology. It is the same force that has been arranging the details of your life since before you had the language to name it. You are here because something in you is ready. Ready to see what you have been almost seeing. Ready to understand what has been quietly unfolding beneath the surface of your pain. Your confusion, your longing, ready to receive the message that the universe has been sending you, not in lightning bolts or dramatic revelations, but in the soft, persistent language of signs, the language it has always used, the language it will never stop using, because it is the only language that reaches all the way in. What you are about to hear will not fix your life from the outside. It will not hand you answers wrapped in certainty. What it will do is something more profound, more lasting, and more real than any external solution could ever offer. It will shift the way you see, and when the way you see changes, everything you look at changes with it. The same circumstances, the same life, the same history are, but suddenly illuminated from within, suddenly coherent, suddenly purposeful, suddenly readable, as if a text that was always in front of you has finally been translated into a language your soul speaks fluently. This is not a video about hope as a comfortable feeling. This is a video about truth as a lived experience. The truth that you have always been guided. The truth that every sign you have ever encountered, every number that has repeated itself in your peripheral vision, every song that played at precisely the wrong moment and somehow said exactly the right thing, all of it has been real. All of it has been intentional. All of it has been the universe, reaching across the distance between the invisible and the visible, tapping you on the shoulder and saying, I am here. I see you. Keep going. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes not from doing too much, but from carrying the weight of feeling unseen by life itself. From showing up day after day in a world that seems to move forward without acknowledging that you are in it, truly in it, with all the complexity and tenderness and searching that you bring. If you have known that exhaustion, and something tells me you have, then let this be the moment it begins to lift. Not because the circumstances have changed, because your understanding of them is about to. Stay with this, all the way through. Because by the time these words are finished, you will not be the same person who pressed play. Something will have shifted, something will have settled, and you will carry with you a knowing so quiet and so certain that it will not need to shout to be heard. You were meant to find this. And now that you have, let it find you fully. The language the universe speaks. The universe has never been silent. That is the first thing you need to understand. From the moment you drew your first breath in this life, the intelligence that moves through all living things has been in constant communication with your soul. The problem has never been that the messages stopped coming. The problem is that no one taught you how to read them, And so you have been living inside a conversation you did not know was happening, receiving transmissions you interpreted as coincidence, dismissing signals you categorized as imagination, walking past signs that were placed precisely in your path by an intelligence that knows you better than you know yourself. We live in a world that trains us to trust only what is loud, only what is literal, only what can be measured and proven and held in the hand. And so we spend our lives waiting for the universe to knock on the door with a formal announcement, a clear instruction, an unmistakable directive. And when no such announcement comes, we conclude that we are alone, that the silence is emptiness, that the cosmos is indifferent. But the cosmos is not indifferent. It is precise. It has always been precise. The imprecision was never in the sending. It was in the receiving. The ancient Hermetic principle of correspondence, one of the foundational teachings of Western mysticism, holds that there is a relationship of mirroring between all levels of existence. As above, so below. As within, so without. This principle does not describe a poetic metaphor. It describes a living mechanism, the way in which the inner world of the soul and the outer world of circumstance are in constant dialogue, each one reflecting and responding to the other in a language that predates every human tongue. The Hermetic tradition understood something that modern psychology is only beginning to formally acknowledge: that consciousness and reality are not separate systems operating in parallel, but a single system in which perception and experience are constantly shaping each other. Carl Jung, who gave the modern world the concept of synchronicity, understood this deeply. He spent decades studying the moments when an inner psychological state and an outer event coincide in a way that carries unmistakable meaning, not because one caused the other in any mechanical sense, but because they belong to the same field of meaning. When you think of someone you have not spoken to in years and they call within the hour, that is not a coincidence that courtesy demands you dismiss. That is the language of a reality that is far more interconnected than the rational mind is comfortable admitting. Jung called this the causal connecting principle, the thread of meaning that runs through events which share not a cause but a significance. The universe speaks in patterns, it speaks in repetition. It speaks in the emotions that rise in you unexpectedly, in the dreams that stay with you long after waking, in the animals that appear at threshold moments of your life, in the words that arrive from the mouth of a stranger and land somewhere deep in your chest like they were always meant for you. It speaks in the strange and beautiful architecture of timing, the door that closes on the day another one opens, the loss that creates space for something your old life had no room for. It speaks in the book that falls off the shelf, in the phrase that appears on the page you opened at random, in the quality of light on an ordinary afternoon that suddenly arrests you with a sense of presence so vivid and complete that time seems to stop. Learning this language does not require years of study or initiation into secret traditions. It requires something far simpler and far more demanding. It requires presence. It requires the willingness to slow down enough to notice. To treat your life not as a series of disconnected events to be managed, but as a coherent narrative being written in real time, authored by an intelligence that loves you with a precision that your mind cannot fully comprehend, but your soul recognizes instantly. The signs are already everywhere around you. They have always been there. The question is not whether the universe is speaking. The question is whether you are finally ready to listen. And the fact that you are here in this moment, receiving these words, that is already your answer. Why you keep seeing the same signs. There is a reason the same number keeps appearing on your phone screen at the exact moment you look up. There is a reason the same theme keeps surfacing in your conversations, your dreams, your chance encounters with strangers. There is a reason that no matter how many times you think you have moved past a particular question, it finds its way back to you, wearing different clothing, arriving through different doors, but carrying the same essential weight. You have tried to outrun it. You have tried to reframe it, resolve it, dissolve it with distraction. And still it returns, not to punish you, to reach you. The universe does not give up. That is one of its most defining qualities. When a soul is being prepared to receive a particular truth, the cosmos will arrange for that truth to present itself again and again, with increasing clarity until the moment of genuine reception arrives. This is not harassment. This is love. This is the intelligence of a teacher who knows that some lessons require more than one encounter before they can be truly absorbed. And it is the intelligence of a guide who understands that the soul does not open on demand, that readiness must be cultivated, sometimes over years, sometimes over lifetimes, before the teaching can land where it is meant to land. The study of angel numbers, the recurring numerical sequences that appear with such uncanny precision in the lives of those who are spiritually awake or awakening, is one of the clearest examples of this cosmic persistence. When you see 1111 on a clock, then on a receipt, then on the timestamp of a message that changes your day, the universe is not playing a trick on your perception. It is using the one language that your rational mind cannot immediately reject: mathematics. Numbers carry an energetic frequency that bypasses the skeptic in you and speaks directly to the part of you that has always known there is more to this life than what can be seen. The sequence 111 carries the frequency of new beginnings, of alignment between thought and manifestation. The sequence 444 carries the frequency of stability, of angelic presence, of being held in a moment of uncertainty. The sequence 222 speaks of partnership, of trust, of the confirmation that you are on the right path even when the path feels unclear. These are not arbitrary associations. They are a vocabulary, ancient, consistent, and deeply personal in the way they are delivered. But it is not only numbers. The sign that repeats itself in your life may be a song, a phrase, a specific sensation in your body that arises in moments that seem unrelated but share a hidden thread, a color, an animal, a memory that surfaces without invitation at moments of particular significance. The form matters less than the function. The function is always the same. The universe is trying to get your attention, and it will keep finding new ways to do so until you turn toward it fully, until you stop explaining the signs away and start receiving them for what they are: a sustained, loving, persistent act of cosmic communication directed specifically at you. There is a condition, however, that governs reception. The soul receives the message only when it is truly ready, not just intellectually curious, not just emotionally desperate, but genuinely prepared to act on what it receives. This is why you may have seen the same sign dozens of times without it landing, and then one day it arrives with such force that everything rearranges itself around it. Nothing changed in the sign. Something changed in you. Your readiness opened a channel that your resistance had kept closed, and the message that had always been there finally found its way all the way in. If you are seeing signs that repeat, take it as confirmation rather than coincidence. The universe is not confused. It knows exactly what it is saying. The invitation now is to stop asking why it keeps repeating and start asking what you have not yet been willing to hear, because the repetition will not stop until the reception is complete, and the reception, when it finally arrives, will feel less like a surprise and more like a remembering, as if some part of you always knew this was coming and has simply been waiting for the rest of you to catch up. The illusion of control and the freedom beyond it. Let us be honest about something. The need to control is not a flaw in your character. It is a response to fear. And fear, at its root, is a response to the belief that you are alone in this, that if you do not manage every variable, hold every thread, anticipate every possibility, something will collapse that only your vigilance is keeping upright. This belief is exhausting, and it is also, at the deepest level, incorrect. The exhaustion is not a sign of your weakness. It is the natural consequence of attempting a task that was never assigned to you. The task of governing a reality that extends infinitely beyond the reach of any single human will. The ancient Stoic dichotomy of control, articulated with extraordinary precision by Epictetus, a man who spent years of his life as a slave and emerged with a philosophy of inner sovereignty that has never been surpassed, and later practiced by Marcus Aurelius on the throne of an empire, draws a clear and liberating line through the center of human experience. On one side of that line sits everything that is truly within your power: your thoughts, your intentions, your responses, your values, your attention, your perception. On the other side sits everything that is not, The actions of other people, the unfolding of external events, the timing of outcomes, the behavior of circumstances that were never yours to command. Epictetus called this distinction the most important thing a human being could learn. Not because it is easy, because it is the only thing that, when truly understood and applied, reliably produces freedom. The Stoics identified this distinction not as a philosophical curiosity, but as the foundational practice of a life well lived. And the mystical traditions that run parallel to Stoic philosophy, the teachings of Taoism with its principle of Wu Wei, the surrender celebrated in Sufi mysticism, the Eastern concept of non-attachment that runs through Buddhist philosophy and Hindu Vedanta, arrive at precisely the same truth through different pathways. The soul that releases its grip on what was never within its dominion does not become passive. It becomes free. It becomes available. It becomes, for the first time, genuinely present to the life it is actually living rather than the life it is frantically trying to engineer. Think for a moment about the things you have spent the most energy trying to control in your life. The relationship you held so tightly it could not breathe. The outcome you rehearsed so many times in your mind that the rehearsal became more real than the moment itself. The future you tried to architect down to the last detail because the alternative, trusting what you could not see, felt unbearable. And now ask yourself, how much of what you controlled did you actually control? How many of your most carefully managed plans unfolded exactly as you intended? And of those that did, how many delivered the peace you were certain the control would produce? The answer, for most human beings, is humbling. Not because you lacked intelligence or effort, but because control over external reality was never available to you in the first place. What was available, what has always been available, is something far more powerful. Your response, your perception, your choice of where to place your attention and what meaning to assign to what arrives. This is not a consolation prize. This is the prize. This is the territory where the only real transformation has ever happened. Not out there in the management of circumstances, but in here, in the sovereign space of the self that no external force can enter without permission. This is not a diminishment of your power. This is the revelation of where your real power lives. And the moment you stop spending it on what was never yours to govern, you discover that you have more than enough to transform everything that is. The energy that returns when you release the grip of false control is staggering. It is creative energy, receptive energy, the energy of a soul that has finally stopped fighting the river and begun to move with it, and is astonished to discover how far and how fast the current can carry a soul that is no longer in the way of its own journey. When pain becomes a portal, there are seasons in a life that feel like they should not be happening. Seasons of loss so complete that you cannot remember what it felt like before. Seasons of failure so total that the version of yourself who had hoped for a particular outcome feels like a stranger. Seasons of confusion so dense that you cannot locate a single fixed point to orient yourself by. These are the seasons that break people, and they are also, though this truth is almost unbearable to receive in the middle of them, the seasons that make people. Not the comfortable seasons. Not the seasons of abundance and ease. The seasons that strip everything away and leave you standing in what feels like nothing, only to reveal that what you thought was nothing was actually the ground. The universe does not punish through pain. This is one of the most important spiritual corrections a seeking soul can receive. The framework of punishment, the idea that suffering arrives as consequence, as cosmic retribution, as evidence of unworthiness, is a human construction layered over a divine mechanism that operates according to entirely different principles. The principle is not punishment. The principle is precision. Every experience of genuine suffering that enters a human life does so with a function, even when that function is invisible from inside the experience. The function is always at its root the same, the removal of what no longer serves, and the creation of the conditions necessary for what has not yet arrived. When something collapses in your life, a relationship, a career, a belief system, a version of yourself you thought was permanent, the collapse is rarely random. It is almost always the universe removing what was blocking your path. Not what you thought your path was. Your actual path. The one your soul agreed to before memory of that agreement was covered over by the construction of a life. The dismantling is not the end of your story. It is the necessary clearing of ground for the next chapter, which cannot be built while the old structure still stands. You cannot plant in ground that is already full. And the universe, which is always planting, always knows when the ground must first be cleared. The spiritual principle that runs through every genuine wisdom tradition, from the dark night of the soul described by the mystic Saint John of the Cross, to the alchemical process of negredo, in which matter must decompose before it can be transformed, to the mythological descent of the hero into the underworld before the return, holds that initiation always looks like destruction from the inside. From inside the chrysalis, there is no evidence of a butterfly. There is only dissolution, only the terrifying loss of the form that was. The caterpillar does not know it is becoming something. It only knows the loss of what it was. But the intelligence that designed the process knows what is being made. It knows because it is making it. Your pain has not been wasted, not a single moment of it. Every loss that carved out space inside you has increased your capacity for depth, for compassion, for the quality of presence that only comes from having genuinely suffered and chosen to remain open. Every failure that dismantled your pride has made room for a humility that will serve you more powerfully than confidence ever could. Every door that closed has protected you from a destination that would have cost you something you cannot afford to lose. This is not a comfortable teaching. It is not meant to make the pain feel smaller. It is meant to make it feel purposeful, because a soul that understands its pain as initiation moves through it differently than a soul that understands its pain as punishment. One contracts, the other expands, and expansion, even when it hurts, is always the direction of growth. The portal is real. You have already passed through more of them than you know, and the one you may be standing in front of right now, the one that looks like crisis, like ending, like the floor giving way, may be the most important threshold your soul has yet been asked to cross. Cross it, not because the other side is guaranteed to be easy, because the other side is guaranteed to be real, and you have spent long enough in the waiting room of your own becoming, the intelligence behind the timing. You have prayed for something and waited. You have prepared yourself and still the arrival did not come. You have done everything you knew to do, released everything you were told to release, trusted when trusting felt impossible. And still the thing you were ready for has not appeared. And in that waiting, something in you has begun to quietly wonder. Perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps what I hoped for was not meant for me. Perhaps the readiness I feel is only an illusion, and the universe has simply chosen not to respond. Perhaps the silence is not patience but absence. Let this chapter be the correction of that thought. Divine timing is not indifference dressed up as patience. It is not the universe's way of testing whether you will give up. It is something far more deliberate, far more loving, and far more architecturally complex than the waiting feels when you are inside it. The timing of every significant arrival in a human life is governed by a set of conditions that extend far beyond the individual soul's readiness. Conditions that involve the readiness of other people, the completion of certain energetic cycles, the alignment of circumstances that must come together in a precise configuration before the thing you have asked for can arrive in a form that will not destroy what it is meant to build. This is not bureaucracy. This is engineering, cosmic engineering, operating at a scale and with a precision that the human mind was not designed to fully perceive. Think of it this way. The seed does not blame the winter for not being spring. It does not doubt the intelligence of the ground that holds it in darkness, that refuses to release it before the conditions necessary for its growth are fully present. The seed does not know what the gardener knows, but the seed does not need to know in order to trust. It simply continues to be what it is, in the season it is in, without mistaking the current stillness for permanent absence. And when the conditions are finally right, when the soil is warm enough, when the light has returned, when the water has come, the growth that emerges is not tentative. It is certain. It is explosive. It is the full expression of everything that was being preserved inside the waiting. You are being prepared, not delayed. not forgotten, not passed over in favor of someone more deserving. You are being prepared for an arrival that your current version of yourself would not know what to do with. The relationship that has not yet appeared requires a version of you that does not yet fully exist. A version being built right now through the very waiting you are experiencing. The opportunity that has not yet opened requires a capacity in you that the current season is developing. The peace you have been longing for requires the depth that only comes from having lived through seasons exactly like this one, and chosen, in the middle of them, to remain open rather than to close. The universe is surgical in its timing. It does not operate in your preferred schedule because your preferred schedule is based on what you can currently see. The universe operates based on what it can see, which is everything. The whole map, not just your current position on it. The whole story, not just the chapter you are living in. From that vantage point, every timing makes sense. Every delay reveals itself as protection or preparation. Every waiting season unveils itself, in retrospect, as the most necessary passage of the entire journey. The timing that felt cruel becomes, with the distance of having arrived, the most precise expression of care you have ever received. Trust the timing, not blindly, not passively, but with the active eyes-open trust of a soul that has begun to understand that the intelligence governing the rhythm of its life is not working against it, it is working, with extraordinary precision, entirely on its behalf. The arrival is coming. It is not early, and it is not late. It is on time in the only way that matters. It is on the universe's time. And the universe has never been wrong about when. Signs hidden in everyday life. The most profound messages the universe delivers do not arrive in visions. They do not require retreats or ceremonies or altered states of consciousness. They arrive in the middle of Tuesday. They arrive in the supermarket, in the lyrics of a song you have heard 100 times but somehow hear differently today, in the unexpected kindness of a stranger, whose words land in a place inside you that you did not know was waiting to be reached. The sacred does not make appointments. It does not announce itself. It simply appears in the gap between one ordinary moment and the next, and waits to see if you are paying enough attention to notice. The sacred does not live only in temples. It lives in the texture of ordinary life, threaded through every moment with a precision so quiet and so consistent that it can be walked past for years without recognition. Learning to see it is not a matter of cultivating supernatural perception. It is a matter of slowing down enough to notice what has always been there. It is a matter of bringing a quality of attention to your daily experience that treats each moment not as a means to the next, but as a message in itself, complete, intentional, and worthy of being received. Consider the times in your life when a book has fallen open to the exact page you needed. When a conversation you were not supposed to hear answered the question you had been carrying in silence. When you drove a different route than usual and encountered something, a phrase on a billboard, a scene that stopped time, a stranger's face, that rearranged something inside you. When a child said something that adults had been dancing around for years, with the fearless precision of someone who has not yet learned to soften truth into social comfort. These are not accidents assembled by a universe of random events. These are the fingerprints of an intelligence that knows you well enough to reach you through the specific details of your specific life. The law of attraction, in its deepest articulation, is not about manifesting objects through positive thinking. It is about the energetic correspondence between the frequency of a soul and the experiences that frequency draws into its field. When you are in genuine alignment, when your thoughts, emotions, and intentions are coherent, you begin to move through the world in a way that makes the invisible visible. Signs that were always present become suddenly legible. Coincidences that you would previously have dismissed accumulate into a pattern so undeniable that skepticism becomes the stranger in the room. You begin to see that the world has been arranged with you in mind, not in the grandiose sense of a universe with no other concerns, but in the intimate sense of a reality that is responsive, that is alive, that is in genuine relationship with the consciousness that moves through it. Begin to practice this, not as a spiritual discipline that requires effort, but as a simple shift of attention. When something arrives that feels charged, when a word, an image, a moment carries more weight than its surface explains, Do not immediately explain it away. Sit with it. Ask what it might be reflecting. Ask what it might be confirming or redirecting. The universe communicates in a personal dialect. It knows what symbols carry meaning for you specifically, what references will bypass your defenses, and speak directly to the part of you that is listening below the noise. It has been studying you your entire life. It knows exactly how to reach you. The only question is whether you will let it. Every ordinary day is an extraordinary message. The difference between those who receive it and those who do not is simply this: the willingness to look. And you are already looking. You have been looking for longer than you realize. The looking itself is the sign that the receiving is near. The soul contract. You forgot you signed. There are people who have entered your life and caused you such pain that the mind cannot make sense of it. The betrayal that arrived from the person you trusted most. The relationship that broke something open in you that has not fully healed. The parent, the partner, the friend, the stranger whose impact on your path was so disproportionate to the time they occupied in your life that the rational explanation has never quite satisfied. You have asked why. You have asked what you did to deserve it. You have asked how the universe, if it is as loving as it is said to be, could permit such a rupture at the root of your life. And the question has never been fully answered by anything the rational mind could produce. The concept of soul contracts does not answer these questions easily, but it answers them honestly, and the answer it offers is one that, when received fully, has the power to transform the deepest wounds in a human life into the most profound sources of wisdom. It does not minimize the pain. It does not excuse the harm, but it repositions the soul in relationship to both, from victim of an arbitrary universe to participant in a sacred curriculum that was designed at the level of the soul's deepest intelligence, with its growth as the central and non-negotiable priority. Before this life, your soul, in whatever form it exists between incarnations in whatever dimension the evidence of near-death experiences points to, did not arrive here unprepared. There is a body of testimony so consistent across cultures, across centuries, across the accounts of those who have stood at the threshold of death and returned, that it cannot be dismissed as mythology. Researchers like Dr. Raymond Moody, Dr. Brian Weiss, and Dr. Michael Newton have documented thousands of cases in which individuals describe, under hypnotic regression or in the aftermath of clinical death, experiences of a between-life state in which the soul reviews its previous incarnation, receives guidance, and participates in the planning of its next one. The details across these accounts, from subjects who have never met in countries that have never been in contact, are strikingly consistent. The soul, before birth, participates in the architecture of its own journey. It chooses, in consultation with other souls and with the intelligence that oversees the curriculum of human evolution, the essential experiences, relationships, and challenges it will encounter in the life it is entering. This does not mean that every painful experience was chosen as punishment or as something to be passively endured. It means that certain collisions between souls were agreed upon because they carry lessons that cannot be received any other way. The person who betrayed you may have agreed, at the level of soul, to play a role that cracked you open so that the light of your own truth could finally enter. The loss that devastated you may have been the exact disruption needed to dislodge you from a path that would have led you further from your essential self. This framework does not erase the pain. It does not require you to feel gratitude for experiences that were genuinely harmful. What it does is offer a perspective that restores agency to a soul that has felt only like a victim of its own story. If the most difficult chapters of your life were part of an agreed curriculum, then you are not broken by them. You are being educated by them. And an educated soul, no matter what it has survived, carries a wisdom that no comfortable life could have produced. Look at the people who have caused you the most pain, not with forgiveness as an obligation, but with the question, what did I learn from this encounter that I could not have learned any other way? The answer, when it comes, is usually the most important answer of your life. Surrender as the highest form of strength. The word surrender carries a wound in it for most people. It sounds like defeat, like giving up, like the moment when the fighter drops their hands and the opponent wins. The culture that shaped you has almost certainly celebrated control, persistence, willpower, and the refusal to yield as the highest virtues of a successful life. Strength has been defined, in nearly every context you have been raised in, as the capacity to hold on, to endure, to resist, to push through. And so the invitation to surrender, real surrender, not the performance of it, but the actual release of the grip, arrives as something that feels dangerous, almost shameful, as if to release is to confess that you were never strong enough to hold. What if everything you were taught about surrender was exactly backward? In the mystical traditions that have preserved the deepest spiritual wisdom of the human race, surrender is not the opposite of strength. It is its highest expression. The Taoist concept of Wu Wei, often translated as non-doing or effortless action, does not describe passivity. It describes the profound intelligence of moving with the current of what is, rather than against it. The river does not force its way through the landscape. It finds the path of least resistance, and in doing so, it carves canyons. The strength of water is not in its resistance but in its surrender to its own nature, and the canyons it carves are among the most breathtaking formations on the planet, not in spite of the water's yielding, but because of it. The sacred feminine principle, honored in wisdom traditions from ancient Egypt to the mystical streams of Christianity, from the goddess Isis, whose name means throne, to Mary, whose surrender to the divine became the axis around which an entire civilization's spirituality turned, recognizes receptivity as a form of power, the capacity to open, to receive, to allow, without needing to control the form of what arrives, is not weakness. It is the posture through which the greatest gifts of existence enter a human life. The closed fist cannot receive. Only the open hand can. And the open hand, offered to a universe that is always reaching toward you, will never be left empty for long. When you surrender to the universe, not with resignation, not with the defeated shrug of someone who has stopped caring, but with the active, intentional, eyes-open trust of a soul that has decided to stop fighting what it cannot change, something extraordinary happens. The energy that was being consumed by resistance becomes available for creation. The attention that was locked on what you cannot control becomes free to engage with what you can, and the space that opens in your inner world begins to fill with exactly what was waiting to arrive the moment you stopped blocking the door. Surrender is not the end of your participation in your own life. It is the beginning of your truest participation. It is the moment you stop performing strength and start inhabiting it. It is the threshold through which every genuine transformation must pass, because transformation cannot happen in a clenched space. It requires openness. It requires the courage to say, I do not know what comes next, and I am willing to find out. And I am willing to receive it as it is, rather than insisting it arrive in the form I have already decided it must take. That willingness is not weakness. That willingness is everything. It is the signature of a soul that has grown large enough to stop needing to be right about the future, and wise enough to trust the intelligence that knows more about your future than you do. The role of silence in receiving signs. The universe speaks constantly. This has already been established. What has not yet been said is this. The volume of what the universe sends does not change based on how much noise is in the room. The message does not get louder to compete with the chaos of a busy mind. It simply waits. It waits in the frequency of stillness, available only to those who create enough internal quiet to receive it. And in a world that has made noise the default condition of existence, that fills every gap, every pause, every moment of potential stillness with sound and stimulation, and the relentless forward motion of a culture that has pathologized rest, the capacity for genuine silence has become one of the rarest and most radical acts available to a human being. This is not a comfortable truth for those of us who have used busyness as a coping strategy, and most of us have. The mind that is perpetually occupied, with tasks, with worry, with the noise of screens and schedules and the endless rehearsal of past conversations and future scenarios, is a mind that has no space for reception. It is a full cup, and a full cup cannot be filled. No matter how generous the pour, a full cup only overflows. The contents of what the universe is trying to deliver simply spill over the edges of a life too crowded to hold them. The relationship between silence and spiritual reception is not metaphorical. It is physiological. Research into contemplative states has repeatedly demonstrated that the brain in genuine stillness operates differently, that the default mode network, responsible for the mind's habitual self-referential chatter, quiets in deep meditation, and that the quieting of this network is consistently associated with experiences of expanded awareness, insight, and what practitioners across traditions have called contact with something larger than the individual self. The mystics described this contact for centuries before neuroscience had the tools to observe it. They described the same phenomenon in different vocabularies: union, presence, the peace that passes understanding, the stillness at the center of the storm. They were not speaking poetically, they were reporting accurately. You do not need to meditate for hours to access this. You do not need a practice perfected over years. What you need is the willingness to be still for long enough to notice what is already present beneath the noise. 5 minutes of genuine silence, not silence as the absence of sound, but silence as the deliberate suspension of the mind's incessant commentary, is enough to change what you are able to receive. 5 minutes of actually stopping, of not solving or planning or reviewing or rehearsing, of simply being in the present moment without agenda, without performance, without the need to produce anything from the stillness except the experience of it. The signs you have been missing have not been absent. They have been waiting at the edge of the silence you have not yet stepped into. The guidance that feels far away is not far away. It is on the other side of the noise, and the noise, with very few exceptions, is optional. It is a choice, a habit, a defense against the intimacy of meeting yourself, and through yourself, the intelligence that speaks in the space between your thoughts. Go quiet. Not forever, not perfectly, just enough. The universe will meet you there. It always does. It has never once failed to show up in the silence of a soul that was genuinely ready to listen. Fate, free will, and the sacred dance between them. Here is a tension that every soul eventually arrives at, usually through suffering. If everything is fated, if the path is already designed, if the lessons were chosen before birth, and the timing is in the hands of a cosmic intelligence that knows more than you do, then what is the point of your choices? And if your choices are genuinely free, if you are truly the author of your own story, then what role does fate play? Are the signs you have been following real, or are you simply constructing meaning in a universe of beautiful, indifferent chaos? These questions have occupied philosophers, theologians, and ordinary human beings across every culture and every century, and they have not been resolved by argument, because argument is not the territory in which they live. They live in experience, in the felt sense of a life that is simultaneously authored and received. The honest answer is that both are true, and the refusal to collapse them into a simple either-or is not intellectual evasion. It is the most accurate description of the actual territory. The soul that insists on resolving this tension into a clean answer will always sacrifice something real in the service of conceptual tidiness. The soul that can hold both truths simultaneously, fate and freedom, design and agency, the predetermined and the chosen, without demanding that one cancel the other, is a soul that has grown into genuine spiritual maturity. Fate, in its deepest spiritual understanding, is not a script. It is a set of sacred coordinates, key experiences, key encounters, key thresholds of transformation that the soul agreed to navigate as part of its curriculum in this life. These coordinates are real. They are the moments of unmistakable gravity that every honest person can identify when they look back across the map of their life. The meeting that changed everything, the loss that redirected the entire arc, the unexpected arrival that could not have been manufactured by any plan. These moments do not feel like choices because they are not choices. They are appointments. They are the pre-agreed intersections where the soul's designed journey and the soul's lived experience converge with an inevitability that the mind experiences as fate and the heart experiences as recognition. But the path between those coordinates is not fixed. The pace is yours. The posture is yours. The quality of presence you bring to each threshold is yours. Whether you arrive at the destined encounter bitter or open, contracted or expanded, asleep or awake, that is the territory of free will. And it matters enormously, because the same fated event can be received in radically different ways, and the way it is received determines what it produces in the soul. The meeting that was always going to happen can transform you or merely pass through you, depending entirely on the quality of consciousness you bring to it. You are both passenger and navigator. The destination was agreed upon before you had language for agreement, but the quality of the journey, the depth of the learning, the grace or resistance of the passage, the wisdom extracted from each experience, that is entirely in your hands. The universe does not take that from you. It never would, because the whole purpose of the journey is not to arrive at a predetermined destination untouched. It is to be shaped, deepened, and awakened by the passage itself. Work with fate, not against it. Recognize the coordinates when they appear, the uncanny moments of gravity, the signs that signal a threshold, the convergences that cannot be engineered. And then bring your fullest, freest, most conscious self to meet them. That is the sacred dance. And you were born already knowing the steps. What happens when you finally trust? There is a moment, and those who have lived it cannot adequately describe it to those who have not, though they spend their lives trying, when a soul stops fighting the universe and begins moving with it. It is not a dramatic moment. It does not arrive with music or revelation or the sudden dissolution of all difficulty. It is quiet. It is almost embarrassingly simple. It is the moment when the exhaustion of resistance finally outweighs the fear of release, and something in you simply lets go. Not of caring, not of hoping, not of your love for the things and people and futures that matter to you, but of the white-knuckled certainty that you must be the one to manage how all of it unfolds. And then everything changes. Not externally, not immediately. The circumstances of your life may look exactly the same the morning after the letting go as they did the morning before it. The problems have not dissolved. The losses have not been reversed. The uncertainties have not been replaced by guarantees. But something in the quality of your movement through those circumstances is different. You are different. Not fixed, not finished, but different in a way that matters at the root, in the place where your relationship with life is formed before it becomes experience. The same wind, but a different sail. The same river, but a soul that has stopped fighting the current and discovered, with astonishment, how naturally the water carries you when you stop exhausting yourself against it. Synchronicities begin to accumulate in a way that was not happening before. The right person appears at the right moment with the right information. An opportunity opens that could not have been engineered by any plan you would have constructed from your previous vantage point. A conversation happens, a door swings wide, a circumstance arranges itself with a precision that makes you stop in the middle of the ordinary moment and acknowledge, quietly and without performance, that something is working on your behalf. Not something vague, something specific, something intelligent, something that knows your name and the contents of your deepest hopes and has been waiting with extraordinary patience for you to get out of the way long enough to let it work. This is not magic. This is alignment. When a soul stops generating the energetic turbulence of constant resistance, it becomes coherent, and coherence is magnetic. The law of correspondence, the principle of energetic resonance that runs through every wisdom tradition that has ever tried to articulate the relationship between the inner life and the outer world, holds that what you are generates what you encounter. A soul in genuine trust generates encounters that reflect that trust. A soul in genuine openness generates openings, not because the universe rewards good behavior, but because the frequency of a trusting soul is the frequency at which the universe's most generous offerings vibrate. The hard days do not disappear. Disappointment does not become impossible. But the experience of difficulty changes profoundly when it is no longer compounded by the belief that the difficulty is proof that something has gone wrong. When you trust, genuinely structurally trust, you can hold the hard days inside a larger story that makes them bearable. More than bearable. Meaningful. And meaning is the most nourishing thing a human soul can receive. More nourishing than comfort. More sustaining than ease. Because meaning does not require the absence of pain. It only requires the presence of understanding. And understanding, once it arrives, transforms everything it touches. What happens when you finally trust is that life becomes an experience of participation rather than survival. You are no longer just enduring what arrives. You are in conversation with it. You are reading it, learning it, allowing it to shape you in ways you would not have chosen, but that you can recognize, with the trust that comes from having walked through this before, as exactly what you needed. And the version of you that emerges from that conversation is more real, more whole and more alive than any version that could have been produced by control. The sign you almost missed. Go back. Not far, just far enough. Think of a moment in your life when something happened that you immediately categorized as misfortune, coincidence, or meaningless difficulty. The job you did not get. The relationship that ended before you were ready. The plan that fell apart in a way that felt like the floor dropping out from under your life. The unexpected detour that disrupted the route you had mapped so carefully. The rejection that arrived without warning and left you in a silence so total it felt like erasure. In the moment, there was no framework for it. There was only the rawness of it, only the disorientation, only the question of how you would find your way forward from a position you had not chosen and did not understand. Now look at where you are now. Look at who you have become. Look at what that disruption cleared space for, what that loss made room for, what that redirection pointed you toward. Even if it took years to arrive at the destination the disruption was protecting. The job you did not get led you through a path you could not have predicted, to work that actually required you. The relationship that ended created the space in which you finally learned something essential about yourself, that relationship, by its nature, had been preventing. The plan that fell apart was protecting you from an outcome that would have taken you further from your actual life. The life that was waiting, that is still waiting, that has always been waiting on the other side of your willingness to let go of the map. The sign you almost missed was not the number on a clock or the stranger's words, though those mattered too. The sign you almost missed was the shape of your own life, the way it has been quietly, consistently steering you toward the fullest version of yourself through the most challenging terrain. The universe's most intimate messages are not always delivered through extraordinary moments. Sometimes they are delivered through the architecture of a life, visible only in retrospect, only when you are far enough from the moment to see its place in the whole, only when the chapter has enough distance that it can be read rather than simply survived. There is a quality of attention that develops in a soul that has learned to look back with spiritual eyes. It is the attention that can sit with the full weight of a painful memory and simultaneously hold the thread of meaning that ran through it, seeing both the suffering and the gift, honoring both without collapsing either into the other. This is not positive thinking. It is not the forced reframing of genuine harm into convenient lesson. It is something more precise. It is the recognition that the intelligence moving through your life has not wasted a single experience. Not one, even the ones that should not have happened. Even the ones that broke something that has not yet fully healed. Even the ones you are still carrying. There is meaning in those too. You may not be ready to see it yet, but it is there, waiting with the same patience the universe has always brought to the task of reaching you. The sign you almost missed is visible now. You can see it, and seeing it, really seeing it, with the eyes of a soul that has been paying attention, changes the way you will see what arrives next. Because a soul that has learned to recognize guidance in retrospect develops the capacity to recognize it in real time. And a soul that recognizes guidance in real time begins to live differently, with less fear, with more curiosity, with the quiet confidence of someone who knows, at a level below language, that they are not alone in this. You are never alone in this. Look at the evidence. It has been there all along. You were always being led. Here is what is true. Not as philosophy, not as comfort offered to someone who is hurting, as lived, verifiable, soul-level truth. You were never lost. You were never abandoned. You were never the random casualty of an indifferent universe moving through its motions without awareness of your presence in it. You were always, in every season, including and especially the ones that felt most forsaken, being led. The leading did not stop when the signs went quiet. It did not pause during your seasons of doubt. It did not withdraw in the face of your anger at the timing, your grief at the losses, your exhaustion at the length of the waiting. It continued, unbroken, through every single moment of every single day with a consistency and a care that your mind was not always able to perceive, but your soul has never once stopped feeling. The signs were real. The synchronicities were real. The timing that felt so wrong and turned out to be so precise, that was real. The pain that carved you open and left you raw and changed and somehow more, that was real, and it was purposeful, and it was part of the most loving curriculum a soul could be given. Even the moments of doubt, the seasons when you stopped believing, when the signs went quiet or you went too noisy to receive them, even those were part of it. Because the soul that has touched doubt and chosen to return to trust is a soul that trusts from depth, not just from comfort. And that depth is not a small thing. It is the thing. It is what makes the trust real rather than fragile, genuine rather than performed. Everything that has brought you to this moment has been a sign. The entire arc of your life, the losses and the arrivals, the closed doors and the unexpected openings, the people who stayed and the people who left and what each departure made possible, all of it has been the universe's sustained and personal communication with your soul. All of it has been the language of an intelligence that has known your name since before you had one. And all of it, every chapter, including the ones you wish you could delete, including the ones that still hurt to remember, has been moving toward this. Toward you sitting here in this moment awake enough to receive what has always been true about who you are and why you are here. The Hermetic tradition teaches that the great work, the alchemical transformation of the soul, is not accomplished in a single moment of revelation, but through the sustained application of awareness to the raw material of a lived life. Lead becomes gold, not through a single application of heat, but through a process that requires time, pressure, and the willingness to remain in the fire long enough for the transformation to complete. You have been in that fire. You have remained. The gold that is emerging is you, not the version of you that existed before the heat, but the version that the heat has revealed. More essential, more luminous, more truly yourself than you have ever been. There is a teaching that runs through the mystical heart of every tradition that has ever tried to describe the relationship between the human soul and the divine intelligence that moves through all things. And the teaching is this: you did not find the path found you. It has always been finding you. It found you in the form of this video on this day at this specific moment in your life when you were ready, perhaps more ready than you know, to hear what has always been true. You are held. You are seen. You are guided by something that loves you with a completeness that your mind cannot fully receive, but your soul has always recognized. The signs were never asking you to understand them perfectly. They were asking you to trust them enough to keep going, and you did. Through every season that tried to convince you to stop, through every voice, internal and external, that suggested you were foolish for continuing to believe that the universe was with you, you kept going. You are here. That is not a small thing, that is the whole thing. Go forward from this moment with the knowing that you carry. Not the knowing of certainty about what comes next. No soul is given that. But the knowing that whatever comes next is part of the same coherent, loving, precise intelligence that has authored every chapter of your life so far. The knowing that you will not face it alone. The knowing that when the next sign appears, and it will appear because it always does, because the universe never stops speaking to the souls it loves, you will recognize it. Because now you know how to look. Because now you know what the language sounds like. Because now you know in the place beneath all knowing that you were never wandering. You were always from the very beginning being led home.